things that you say, held accountable. Make sure you read things. And I didn't do that today because, as everybody should, follow Spencer Davies on Twitter at Spin Davies. Spencer, I click on your fantastic article from Basketball News, and it says Andre Drummond buyout. Now, in my head, I wanted to read a buyout is possible when in reality the headline is a buyout is currently off the table, according to sources. We welcome Spencer to the show. I just wanted to will it to happen, Spencer. I don't know.
I feel like you're not the only one that wants that as well. But, you got it right the second time.
It is not going to happen. Spencer Davies from Basketball News joining us. So, Spencer, I'm going to ask you the hard question, man. What happens to Drummond now? Do you think a trade will happen quickly? And how hard is it going to be to get back decent assets? Oh,
man. Well, first, I think that a lot of people have to kind of table their expectations for what kind of return they're going to get for Andre Drummond. This seems to be more of a decision to open up minutes for Jarrett Allen than it is to get back a big haul for Andre Drummond. And reason being is, one, Andre Drummond's contract is massive. It's $28.7 million. So they have to take $23 million back in salary. So that in itself is not easy to do. Two, it's an expiring contract. So it's one of those things where he is going to have to either, say that he's going to commit long-term to the team that he gets dealt to, or he just goes into free agency, which doesn't make it any easier on the Cavs to really find a partner in that sense. And three, like I said before, with that contract, kind of just adding on to that, it's not easy to find a one-team return that they could do because it's going to involve at least 3 to 4 players in most situations, especially for those destinations that Drummond would likely want to go to, playoff contenders, championship contenders, whatever he would like, probably. So it's something that probably is going to take a little bit of time to figure out. There are ways to get it done, but Kobe Altman's just going to have to get creative in it.
And I think that's kind of where I'm at too, Spencer, where I almost equated it to a lotto ticket. I thought when they traded for Drummond, they said, hey, this could really pay off at the end, or it could kind of blow up in their face. Do you think it's that severe where this literally blew up in their face, or do you think there is a world where it kind of worked out?
I think it worked out okay.
Okay.
I don't think that they expected Jarrett Allen to just fall into their lap like he did. Like, that's something that might have altered their plans. Who knows? Maybe there was a long-term outlook that the Cavs and Drummond had for each other. But it's just something that just didn't work out just because Allen became available at the price he was available for, and Kobe Altman executed a heist. And right away, they have someone who's younger, someone who's more of a modern center, requires less usage, somebody who makes quick decisions, somebody who fits their timeline at 22 years old despite being in his 4th season in the NBA. It's just one of those things where it kind of sucks for Andre because he had given everything that he had and was a tremendous leader in the locker room, was playing excellent, as we know, at the beginning of the season, especially when the young guards were out and people were getting injured. He was stepping up and playing big time. But then once those players kind of started to get back into the mix, the usage on offense was fluctuating. Lineups in and out were really kind of hurting the chemistry of the team overall. And that's more of a team kind of conversation. But I think it all kind of relates to what's going on here. But, I mean, Drummond's still going to be with the team. He's just not going to be active in playing. So he'll still be around. And that's kind of something that probably going to have to, observe and see how that goes. But for what it's worth, I think that the way that Drummond has been this year with the young talent and in the locker room, that I don't think he's going to make too much of a fuss as long as Kobe Altman and company deliver on the promise.
Spencer Davies joining us for Basketball News. I want that job, Spencer, to get paid to not show up and not do things. That's a goal for one day. But eventually, when they do trade Drummond, I know this is kind of a loaded question, what should we expect back? You mentioned multiple players. The money's got to match. Is a first-round pick completely off the table? Just your best guess on what the return might be.
I would highly, highly doubt a first-round pick coming back from him because we have to remember, what did the Cavs acquire Andre Drummond for last season at the trade deadline with 2 years on his contract?
Nothing.
They gave up Brandon Knight, John Henson, and a second-round pick. Brandon Knight wasn't even in the rotation. John Henson was good, but he also was often injured.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of return for somebody who was once an all-star at his position, that's not exactly a lot. So now take that into consideration when Drummond has an expiring contract at the same salary, again, $28.7 million, and it's more of we've got to find a place for this guy to go than it is about who we're getting back. So I know that you mentioned my article. I mentioned probably about 6 or 7 teams. Realistically, there's probably like 3 destinations, but there just are like possibilities out there. My most intriguing ones, I think, come via the Sacramento Kings and the New York Knicks. The Kings have 2 players who are either out of the rotation or haven't played yet, which is Nemanja Bjelica, who's a stretch 4, and Jabari Parker. We know who Jabari Parker is. Just hasn't really had it over the last 3-4 seasons since the injury. And then plus a Corey Joseph, who's a backup point guard for the Kings, who makes $12 million. That would work for Drummond and someone like Damian Dotson, who's had spotty minutes. With the Knicks, they're kind of interesting because they have $15 million in cap room, so they don't have to match exactly how all the other teams do. We do know that Mitchell Robinson's out with a hand injury, so maybe it's one of those things where Thibodeau is like, we're in contention here. Should we make a move to make sure we stay here? Because their only center behind Robinson is Nerlens Noel, who's been playing well. But it's just one of those things where, maybe Drummond's there and it kind of entices them. We saw that they went and traded for Derrick Rose. Leon Rose went out and got Tibbs' partner from Chicago and Minnesota. So is that completely off the table? I don't think so. There's someone like Frank Ntilikina and Kevin Knox that could make sense in a package with Noel. I think that would be a deal that would kind of benefit both teams, especially since Ntilikina and Knox are out of the rotation, as we know. So those are just a couple of teams. I know a lot of people are mentioning, the Nets and the Raptors, but you got to really dig in to find some interesting deals there. And a couple of them are 4 for 1, which is really hard to work. So 3-team deal might end up where it ends up going. But again, it's just all speculation at this point. But I think the Kings and the Knicks were some interesting ones that I came up with there.
Spencer, what's wrong with the Cavs? I mean, just they win against the Nets, and then they're on the 7-game losing streak now. They've lost a ton of games since. I know the schedule is a grinder, and it was really hard, but what the Cavs used to have was defense, and that's gone. No 3-point shooting. I know it's not as simple as saying just one thing, but really when you look at it, Spencer, what happened to them?
It's a domino effect, man. I mean, you think, Larry Nance jams his finger, or jams his wrist, and then he ends up spraining a finger. He's in and out of the lineup. He's a huge part of that defense. Drummond was a huge part of that defense, and then he had the back injury. McGee had been in and out of the rotation a little bit. Obviously, Jarrett Allen makes a huge difference on that end, but with that, I think it kind of affects all areas. Just when the defense isn't really communicating and contesting the 3-point line, I think they got burned a lot from the perimeter in this stretch. Then it affects the offensive end. They're not getting stops. They're not getting deflections, which means they're not getting out onto the fast break or in transition, where they do most of their damage in offensive ways, rather than running half-court sets and letting opposing defenses get set and ready for what they're going to run. Because truth be told, the Cavs don't have many actions that they're running other than high pick and roll. And what's happening is everybody knows who Colin Sexton is now, so they're going up and attacking him when the pick is set, and they're going to attack him, trap him, blitz, whatever you want to call it. And then they're forced to kind of give it up a little bit. And guys aren't really moving off the ball as much as they were a couple weeks ago. And I know that it sounds like an excuse, but if you do look at the gauntlet of teams they have played, it's just brutal.
It's been pretty bad.
And something that Jared Allen mentioned to me last week when I asked him how difficult it is when you have these lineups that aren't continuous. Like, if you look at the amount of lineups they've had, starting lineups and rotations, it's just been guys in and out. There is no sense of continuity in there whatsoever. But Jared Allen went further to it and said that they haven't had time to practice. They've had like 3 hours, and during these shoot-arounds, they've been able to go through walkthroughs. But they haven't been able to practice. And there's been like so many games in such a small amount of period. I think they've had like 2 or 3 off days during this entire West Coast road trip. So that probably sticks on top of it, plus the time change. Like that's just me thinking out loud, and I know that they don't like excuses. And it has been a very bad product as of late. But I thought that they played well against the Suns. They just kind of ended up on the short end of the stick in that game. I don't think they particularly played bad against the Clippers last night. Those middle games were very ugly, don't get me wrong. But I think that all kind of factors into it.
Yeah, it's so tough right now, Spencer. So we'll let you go on this one because I know you wanted to jump in on Watt Watch, as I've dubbed it here for J.J. Watt. You think he'll actually make his way to Cleveland?
Oh, man, if he did.
It'd be nice,
man, I would love it. I would love it. I think that they just need to get some sort of pass rusher opposite of Miles there. And go get a linebacker, damn it.
Yes,
that's
please.
That's my one want. And, of course, maybe somebody in the secondary, maybe an extra corner or something.
Maybe the first ever cross-team, cross-sport trade. Drummond to some team for Watt to come here. I don't know. Whatever I got to do to get that done, Spencer, I'm in for that. We'll work on that. Great stuff with Spencer Davies. Follow him on Twitter at Spin Davies and Basketball News. Really appreciate the time, man.
No problem, Matt. Thanks for having me.
And I like to think, basketball. I need guys like Spencer. I need guys like Danny Cunningham, guys from Basketball News. I need that.